Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat?
It's a big blow. I think he's an important part to our offensive line and the way that we play up front, and so that was difficult to lose him. And yet, it's part of the game, and we've got to be able to step up and be able to, still play at an acceptable level when we lose guys like that.
That did not happen on Sunday. Dennis Allen, after the Saints lost Erik McCoy due to a groin injury, we learned today that McCoy is going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks, needing surgery on that groin. Our buddy Ross Jackson, Locked on Saints podcast, of course, our lead Saints writer over at LouisianaSports.net, has a piece up. He looked at 3 potential additions to the roster for the New Orleans Saints. He invited Ross to come on here to knock that around a little bit. How are you, dude?
Hey, buddy, doing great, man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, let me get. We appreciate the time, man. Let me get your reaction to the news. What this means? McCoy being out, 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, I mean it's a big one, big loss for New Orleans. I mean, for any team to lose their starting center who helps to make calls at the line and all these other things, it's not just the guy that snaps the ball and blocks a little bit, right? Like this guy's got a lot of responsibility, and he's been doing it at a high level for New Orleans since he was drafted back in 2019 as a plug and play guy. So it's a big impact for New Orleans, and especially to be missing him for 6 to 8 weeks. That's a long time for the Saints to have to cover here. This is a team that traditionally doesn't carry a specific backup center, so that also means that you're probably upsetting one of your 2 guard spots as well, moving one of those guys over to center. So not only are you going to be looking at a new starter at center, but that's probably going to lead to a new starter at one of those guard positions as well. So it's got a little bit of a ripple effect.
Do you think with how different do you think the line looks this week? Instead of having to make an in-game change like they did, now with a week to prepare for this, do you think, or how do you think it might look any different?
Yeah, I think it's probably going to look pretty similar to what New Orleans did last week in-game, to where they'll move, potentially Lucas Patrick over to center and then plug in Oliudo over at left guard. They could turn to Landon Young at left guard, potentially. In that case, they didn't do that in-game last week because he was managing an injury over the course of the practice week, so that might have had a little bit of an impact there. But I'll tell you the other thing that we're looking for here too is Cesar Ruiz also left for a play with an injury before going back in. How much does that linger? What does that mean for his week 4 availability as well? So there could be some inherent additional changes. But based upon what happens at center here, I would expect it to look pretty similar to what the New Orleans Saints decided to do when Erik McCoy went out in-game.
What about Nick Saldiveri, Ross? What's his prospects?
Yeah, I think that he's the guy that could potentially end up slotting in at left guard if they do move Lucas Patrick from guard to center, as is sort of what I expect at this time. The thing with Saldiveri is that he missed a whole bunch of training camp, right? He dealt with that calf injury all throughout camp and everything. So the Saints in-game going to Oliudo made sense. He's the guy with more time on task that's not coming off of an injury like Landon Young was. And so having somebody like Nick Saldiveri, maybe with now more opportunity, more time on the field, having practice now for the last couple of weeks, maybe with a week of practice, could potentially be the guy that ends up starting at left guard. So I'd watch for him to be in that conversation along with Landon Young and Oliudo.
Is he healthy? Is Saldiveri healthy as best we know, able to play?
I've been told that he is healthy and that he feels good to play. He ended up going in on that one play that the Saints had to take Cesar Ruiz off for a snap. He ended up going in at left guard, and they shifted Oliudo over to right guard in that situation. The big question mark around Saldiveri was basically getting his wind, right? Getting the conditioning, football shape, all those things. That's where sort of you're hoping that the progress has continued over the course of the portion of his return since the season began.
Yeah, I guess he wouldn't be active if he wasn't able to play.
Right.
You wouldn't carry him on the active roster. Ross Jackson's with us. He's on Twitter at RossJacksonNola. Y'all give him a follow. You can read his stuff over at LouisianaSports.net. Of course, you can hear him on the Locked on Saints podcast every single day. You have a piece up for us over at LouisianaSports.net where you kind of you knocked around 3 possibilities that the Saints could address maybe in free agency or veterans that they could sign. Let's run through these options as you see, and we can take them one at a time. You started with center Mason Cole. What can you tell us about him?
Yeah, Cole's an interesting one because look, the Saints have shown traditionally that they like their, Big Ten offensive linemen. We've seen that with Ryan Ramczyk. We've seen that with Cesar Ruiz. This is another one of those guys that's coming from that conference of colleges in his history as a Michigan Wolverine. But even beyond that, he overlapped with offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak in Minnesota in 2021. So there's some familiarity there. The system was different during that time, but maybe their familiarity will help a little bit with whatever that learning curve is going to be. I think when you look at the fact that he's got 2 straight years of over 1,000 yards of snaps at center with the Pittsburgh Steelers over the course of the past couple of years, who are typically a team that has a strong offensive line, I think that's something that kind of leans there a little bit too. So he gives you a little bit of familiarity, gives you some athleticism, and gives you a little bit of experience as well. They could add him immediately to the active roster or as a free agent if they end up moving Erik McCoy to injured reserve, which makes sense, and then moving a practice squad member up to their active roster. They could put Cole on their practice squad, give him a couple of weeks to kind of learn the system, and then see if he can move up from there.
Okay.
So they'd have some multiple options there.
Another veteran is Brian Allen, who won a Super Bowl at the Rams a couple of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. And he's somebody that was a big-time contributor to what that run game was. And as that run game even rebranded year after year over in Los Angeles, going from wide zone to mid ISO and kind of all the different things that he can do. He's got a 5.0 40-yard dash speed, so he has the speed and athleticism that you're looking for and the experience within the wide zone system, even though he doesn't have any overlap with the existing coaching staff. That's notable.
The other option that you mentioned was Conor McGovern. That's a little more complex because he's currently on the Jets practice squad. So walk us through if they decided to go that. First of all, the prospect and what that would all entail if they were able to add him.
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Now, I want to make sure that I say, too, there's 2 Conor McGoverns in the NFL. One of them currently plays for the Bills. We're discussing, as you mentioned, the one that came into the league in 2017. And somebody like, he plays for the Bills. Like, no, the other one.
The other
And so he's on that Jets practice squad. We'll get to that in a sec. But the reason why I think that he would be of interest to New Orleans comes down a lot to the fact that, look, he had familiarity with John Benton, who's the New Orleans Saints offensive line coach now. Benton was the offensive line coach and run game coordinator in 2021, 2022 with the Jets. And so I think that that's something that really lends itself a bit to what it is that New Orleans could potentially do. They found some success there, too. So he's another one that's got a little bit of familiarity and that has some familiarity also with what the system was intended to be during that time too. The tricky part with him is that he's not an option for your practice squad because he's already on another team's practice squad. You would have to sign him to the active roster, so he would be a guy that you would be signing in lieu of elevating anybody from your practice squad up. That doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it's just a little bit of a different process.
Yeah, it's a great notation to keep in mind. Last thing, any idea this week, Ross, what a timeline would look like for them to make any personnel decisions?
Well, Tuesdays are typically the days where they'll do some tryouts and things like that. It's a typical tryout day across the NFL. We should be getting transaction reports here soon from the NFL, so we'll see if there's anything that took place for the Saints in terms of hosting any of those workouts, tryouts, anything like that. I would imagine that anything that they wanted to do, even if it's not necessarily adding somebody to the practice squad, but maybe making an elevation or anything like that, that any of that stuff would probably happen before they got into practice tomorrow. The big key is going to be when do they make the decision to move Erik McCoy to injured reserve. There's not a real reason to wait, but we've also watched New Orleans kind of slow play the IR moves in the past. But with surgery, that seems like a pretty significant and pretty easy decision to make. So that would have to be the first thing that kind of falls in place to open up that roster spot and then potentially start moving either a new player onto your active roster or moving somebody up from the practice squad.
Make sure you get over to LouisianaSports.net. You can read all of Ross's work there, including his piece that he has up right now on the 3 options the Saints should consider to replace Erik McCoy, who's going to be out 6 to 8 weeks with groin surgery. Tough blow for New Orleans. Ross, we appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, bud. Take care. Stay safe. Talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.